Oh, Ubisoft. How has your 2024 been? Release any new games? Release any new IPs? Ooh, satisfy your shareholders. That's kind of important. Turn a profit on a single player game not called Assassin's Creed or Far Cry. Oh, that would be that would probably be great. So, if you haven't heard based on the title of the video, Prince of Persia is dead. It's dead. It's not coming back. There's no been plans to release any new games because the new one that came out in 2024 that made my year actually pretty good is done. This is the only one. This little 2D Metroidvania game, not really little, but it's a pretty good Metroidvania, has been over. The team has been disbanded. They're no longer working on the game, and all the new content, any potential sequel, dead. Now, I don't know anything about your public perception as of late, but I don't think it's doing too well because this game, Lost Crown, which I bought on release, I actually bought it twice because, I'm just a really big fan. It actually we played pretty well. It got pretty high scores, like 80s to 90s. Game of the year contender already early on. Probably one of your best games you've released literally in the past year. Actually, the last game that I loved from Ubisoft was Assassin's Creed Origins, and then there was this one. And it really was just nice to see a big AAA game, the developer, release something small and medium that doesn't take a godzillion amount of hours to complete. And it's also not priced at $70, which I think is still a stupid standard when games are coming in half broken all the time. But that's for a different topic. And it had critical reception. And, the marketing wasn't so good for this game. Like the stupid Killmonger hairstyle was just dumb. That someone really took an L on that one. And the hip-hop music, horrible choice. But other than that, the demo, I think that kind of revitalized some of it. It was actually, I remember I played the demo. I remember the demo was so fun. I ended up playing it even after I finished it because it was like, oh, this combat is actually just like 2D Devil May Cry. This is actually the most fun I've had playing a 2D game since Smash Bros. It was that like, oh, I can really like have fun. I can do some combos. Like it actually has some, versatility in its combat, unlike some of the Metroidvanias where it's really just like one hit, two hit, and then you're kind of over. This game was actually went pretty deep with its combat system, and the platforming was also really good because it's also a Prince of Persia game, and there's some time powers, and overall it was just a really, really solid game. So what do you expect to do when you fire the whole team? So in an article that reads from a French developer, it says that I've heard and read it was the best game production of my entire life. 3 or 4 times in a single weekend while getting information on the game devs. One after the other, I was told it was seen as a beacon of hope to create a safe space for people that were burnt out and beyond good and evil too. The team has been disbanded by Ubisoft. So this comes from a French developer from a YouTube video, which I can link to. I believe this was a conversation from one of the devs from Ubisoft Montpellier and what they're up to, and they said that the team has been disbanded. I think it goes on and talks about his experience working on Montpellier and how it was probably like the pinnacle of his time at Ubisoft, because I feel like most devs had probably the best time like creating this game. It seemed like there was a lot of love poured into it. They did an MMA with the animator, said that this is their favorite project they ever worked on, and it shows because there's just a lot of love poured into this game. There's a lot of care, a lot of nice attention to detail in it. Article further reads that internally the fate of the game was already decided a few weeks after the release of the game. It was clear in spring that after releasing a few DLCs and cosmetics, it would be the end. So this game already, 3 weeks into it, it didn't sell that much. It only sold 300,000 and made around 15 million in revenue. So this game also released physically and digitally. It was not on Steam with Ubisoft's dumb decision for it to be not on Steam. And it was also accessible through Ubisoft's subscription service. And it's funny because literally, I think a day before, after it was officially released, one of the Ubisoft's executives said gamers should get used to not owning their physical games. Right after they released this game, like how brain dead do you have to be for that to get made a headline right after you released your best game in years? What was up with that? And granted, that comment was kind of a long conversation about something, and obviously I think it was kind of cherry picked to make it look bad. But the fact that like no Ubisoft exec quickly ran to like Twitter, be like, oh, like quickly about to try to undo what he did, say, oh no, you can still buy our games. Just if we want to take a subscription service to the next level, we have to get used to not own a game. But he didn't try. They just didn't say. They just let that be a headline, and we're like, yeah, so what? Who cares? In the future, you're not going to be owning your games, bitch. Get used to it. A few members of the core dev team fought to get a sequel greenlit, which did not happen. Then they pushed for 2 expansions, hoping that it would work this time, but it didn't since Ubisoft needed more hands to help on other projects that had better sales potential, which wasn't the case with Lost Crown not meeting sales expectations. Now, granted, this was a 2D Metroidvania game selling for around $50-$60 Canadian. Now I think that's a pretty hard pill to swallow. Right, Metroidvania's not known to be super expensive. They're usually made by small teams of indie devs, and here's a AAA developer coming in and essentially putting in a lot more money into this game. Like there were cutscenes, there were like motion capture done, there was more oomph, more AAA oomph behind it. By the end of the day, it was like mostly a double A game. It wasn't an open world. It was just still a Metroidvania at the end of the day. But selling it for $50, bold decision by Ubisoft. I don't know why they think they can get away with it. And especially Ubisoft games always go on sale within a matter of months. And the fact that they pitched in 2 expansion packs to kind of like be like, hey, if we keep releasing more expansion packs, more cosmetics, maybe the players will end up getting this. Will end up, the sales will go up, and then we can finally make a profit. Because generally, how it works, most games within the first month or 2 are like that tells you all you need to know. You don't necessarily need to make a profit in the first 4 months, but you do need to at least break even. Because over the years, and with good reception, you'll eventually turn a profit. So it doesn't necessarily mean you have to have a profit within the first day or first week or even like the first month. As long as you break even enough, then it can be justified that, hey, we did all right, we can keep moving forward. Because games that like don't sell well initially can still make money in the long run when they go on sale, when the Black Friday and stuff, especially when word of mouth gets around. And this game was pretty good. Like I don't know anyone who finished it who didn't like it. It was pretty great. And finally, this is the most wild part of the whole story. Another crazy justification that the dev team received from higher ups was that releasing a sequel for the game would cannibalize long-term sales of the first game. Releasing a sequel for the game would cannibalize long-term. So if we made a sequel to a pretty critically acclaimed game, somehow we won't be able to turn a profit on the first game because everyone will just end up playing the sequel. Like, that makes sense. Like, I really don't understand how that works. So if they made a sequel that was just as good if the first one, if not better, people will not play the first one, just play the second one, and once we lose money. Like Ubisoft, that's such a brain dead thing to say. So you can lose money on your first product, but then make it back if the second product is just as good. This game had so much potential. This series had so much potential because it was made by a great team. It was made by the Rayman team. It was that genuinely good. And the fact that they would think we wouldn't make more on a sequel is pretty short-sighted. It's like the game has to just break even or be profitable on first try. Which at the end of the day, it is a business. If Ubisoft doesn't see a sequel not getting made enough, I understand it. But still, like, there is a case made for talented developers when their first game is reviewed great, that their second game can be even better because they have more experience. But the fact that they weren't given a chance to at least make a second game just really rings hollow. And granted, like, look, it's a business. If your game doesn't make money, yeah, you're probably not gonna get a chance to make a second one. But Ubisoft needs more in the tank. Like there's the point where there's something called brand value. So this is the reason why Nintendo can release Metroid Dread, which I think was not as good as Prince of Persia. It was literally half the size. It was a fully priced game, but that sold 3 million. Prince of Persia Lost Crown only sold 300,000, 10%. But why did Nintendo's version of basically the same game sell more? It's because Nintendo has such good brand value. Nintendo is perfectly fine with losing money on the first product as long as it's reviewed well and actually is a great game to take a chance on the second one because they know they have talented developers. The fact that Ubisoft was just like, didn't make enough money, let's pull the plug, just screams like they just don't care enough in the long-term success. Like you can have one great game that doesn't sell well, but it helps their brand. And Ubisoft desperately, if anything, they need help with their brand because their brand is just known right now to be Assassin's Creed, Far Cry, and Tom Clancy. And that is it. They canned the Immortals Phoenix game because apparently it just didn't make enough money. Or hold on, let me check. Did Immortals Medium actually break enough money? Looking up Immortals Phoenix Rising, it looks like it only sold a moderate amount of copies, which just kind of means it broke even. I think Ubisoft generally said they're satisfied with the product, but they're not ecstatic about it. Ultimately, the sequel was canned so they can focus their developers on other projects, similar to what's happening with Prince of Persia: Lost Crown. Ultimately, it's just another game Ubisoft just didn't see future in. They didn't see potential in releasing a sequel to a potentially critically acclaimed game, and just gave up on it. And the worst part about it is that like, if in the future Ubisoft wants to make another 2D Prince of Persia game or another Immortals Phoenix Rising game, they can't just collect all all those developers may have been gone, may have left the company, may have worked on other projects. You don't know what can happen to them. So like, it's almost impossible for yet to get sequels on potentially great games. So, but looking ahead to the future of Prince of Persia, we have the remake. The remake that should have came out in 2020 or 2021, then it was 2022, and they're like, oopsies, we canceled it. So now it's releasing in 2026, 6 years after it's been officially announced, and 23 years after the original. And I think that one will do much better, because it's a remake, so it's easier. It's easier for the common audience to be like, okay, I had success before. It sold 15 million copies. For somehow, yeah, the original actually sold a lot of copies. It was reviewed well, considered a masterpiece at the time, and I know what, I still play it. It's still a great game. But will this game fail? I really doubt it. I just hope that, I know Ubisoft's going through a lot of troubles right now, canceling games, announcing that Star Wars Outlaws didn't sell well. How do you lose money on a Star Wars game? Only Ubisoft can do that. So I know Ubisoft isn't best for predictions. I don't think this game, the remake, will get canceled or paused because I think it's a bit too far into development. It's right in the middle of it, so I don't see that happening. Alright, so I'm going to append this video because some new news just broke out about the Prince of Persia Lost Crown. So coming in from Insider Gaming, Tom Henderson, it says that the Prince of Persia Lost Crown team was disbanded because it fails to meet internal sales expectations. And those sales expectations were pretty high. So, in a statement to Eurogamer, the publisher said that Prince of Persia Lost Crown team has moved on to other projects while benefiting from their expertise, and Ubisoft is focused on making the game available to more players. as if it literally released on everything, PS4, PS5, Xbox One, Xbox One X, Steam, and Epic. I actually don't know what console it's missing. Like literally the graphing calculator. I guess it's on the graphing calculator, Ubisoft. Anyway. And second, I understand that the decision to move on from Prince of Persia: Lost Crown and any potential sequels made around the time of May this year, and was due to the game missing sale internal expectations. Some sources say that Ubisoft expecting Lost Crown to sell similarly to the biggest Metroidvanias in the market, with 1 million units sold in a relatively short space of time. Prince of Persia: Lost Crown sold approximately 1 million units at the time of writing. So apparently at around May, it wasn't selling around 1 million units, and only just recently did it cross the 1 million threshold. Again, I do not see how that's an internal disappointment, considering Metroid Dread, has such good branding, and then Ubisoft does not have that with any of their games. As for which project Lost Crown developers have joined, it's understood that the majority moved on to other projects: Beyond Good and Evil 2, Project Ovar, the next mainline Ghost Recon game, and Project Steamboat. Ooh, a Rayman remake. But Beyond Good and Evil 2 is still a few years away. Developers across the publisher are confused as to why Ubisoft continues to invest tens of millions in development a year, which will likely never get back. So I just don't understand why they don't cancel at this point. This thing has been literally been developed since 2008. There was a CGI trailer for this game that is nearly 16 years old. 16 years old. And Ubisoft still continues to pour money into it. Like, they must have just lost hundreds of millions of dollars into this project. Developers tell me that Lost Crown was a perfect project. It was first pictured in June 2020, and saw a relatively straightforward development pipeline, a luxury that most development teams at Ubisoft don't have. Yet still, Ubisoft's ridiculously high internal expectation for such a project have once again prevented developers from exploring creative ideas. So because it didn't make absolute bank, they refused to shut down. Look, like, it's just asinine that it wasn't allowed to flourish, it wasn't allowed to grow, because another new IP by the name of Stellar Blade also sold $1 million, and its publisher was actually pretty positive about it. For a new IP, which Prince of Persia essentially is for the younger demographic, I don't think I've spoken to anyone around their early 20s who even knows what Prince of Persia is, because the last game literally came out when they were children in 2010, and then you make a new Prince of Persia game in 2024, 14 years later, and expect them not to know anything? Yeah, Prince of Persia is basically a new IP in and of itself, and they're treating it like, didn't sell 1 million units, we gotta get rid of it. So, and the crazy thing about it too is that, like, having a straightforward development is so important, because it doesn't waste time. The fact that they were able to make this game relatively smoothly and with such passion behind it shows that this has such a good potential for growth. 1 million should have been enough for them to get a follow-up, and especially with the critically acclaimed, and especially with the fact that the remake is coming out. That will also help the brand, because they're like, oh yeah, this remake is coming out, which hopefully is also just as good. So, yeah, I have sympathy for the Lost Crown developers, because this game was Ubisoft's best game, and it just had a lot of passion behind it, had a lot of love carried into it, and now they have to go work on the next Tom Clancy game, and Beyond Good and Evil 2. That will sell even less than Lost Crown did, and a Rayman remake, it actually does have potential, because Rayman is kind of child friendly, and almost like Ubisoft's response to like Nintendo mascot platformers. So I'm actually kind of excited about that. But anyway, that's the video.